It's really a missed opportunity that I don't already have my Christmas tree up. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are going to be doing a 5x5 of holiday romances. Before we get into anything bookish, however, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments what is your favorite holiday romance. Alright, so if you're new here, my 5x5 is a series in which I am trying to find 5 5-star reads in one video. Usually they have some sort of a theme. I'll put a link to my playlist up above if you're interested. I have not succeeded thus far. This time around, I had to go with holiday romances. It fit so perfectly with this time of year. For the breakdown of this video, I'm going to give you a summary of the book I will be reading, followed by a 50% update with an estimated rating, and then a final update with an actual rating. So first up, I read Holly Jolly Diwali by Sonya Lalli. This story is following our main character of Nikki, who has always done everything incredibly reasonable and practical in her life. When she ends up getting laid off, she decides it might finally be time to do something a bit spontaneous. Luckily for her, a friend is currently getting married in India, and she decides to book a last-minute ticket there. While at the wedding, she ends up meeting the handsome musician Sam, and the two of them end up spending the rest of Diwali together. Hey y'all, so I've officially hit the halfway point in Holly Jolly Diwali, and unfortunately, quite quickly out of the gate, this had a trope that I do not enjoy. There is a love triangle element, and if I'm being honest, I don't think it's necessary at all. I think it was purely utilized to push our main character to finally take that jump and go to India on this trip, and then just simply to act as an obstacle for the romance, though I don't even think he really works as that all that much. With that negative out of the way, I do actually really like our main character, Nikki. She certainly has a case of good girl complex. She's a bit obsessed with having the perfect life and being the perfect daughter for her parents. I definitely can feel a connection with this main character. I sympathize for her. However, I'm listening to the audiobook of this one, and I will say the narrator does not give her a lot of emotion in her dialogue, making the character feel kind of stilted. I don't know if that's purely because of the audiobook narrator or if it could actually be because of the book. It's kind of hard to tell. Like I said, Nikki ends up making that decision to officially go to India for her friend's wedding, and then kicking off from there, she is trying to learn more about her heritage, given the fact that she has felt quite disconnected from her Indian roots. Anytime we're introduced to a new character, she will ask them about the importance of Diwali, and each time she gets a different answer. The different answers certainly boil down to each of these characters' cultures, their history, and then each of their religions and how they celebrate the holiday as well. While I'm definitely enjoying the little bits we're getting about that, I do think for the time being it is underutilized in comparison to the wedding. I'm definitely learning a lot more about Indian weddings than I really am about Diwali. There have been some heavier topics tossed in as well, which I do appreciate, such as difference in class, colorism, and even rape culture in India. All of these feel like they've been well handled. They make sense whenever they come up. They don't take over the story and come across as too preachy, and they're not bringing the entire tone of a otherwise fun rom-com down. Across from Nikki, we have Sam, who is a bass player in a London band and is quite charismatic. I do think they're very adorable. I really enjoy the banter back and forth between them. However, I don't think the chemistry is really there. On top of this having a love triangle, which I'm not a big fan of, it's also insta-lovey, which I'm not really a big fan of that either. So while I'm having a fun time reading this, it's just not quite what I was expecting going in. Like I said, Diwali feels like it's not really being utilized as much. Hopefully that'll change in the second half of the book, and hopefully the chemistry between our two main characters will get better as well. As far as representation goes, Nikki is Punjabi and a Sikh, whereas Sam is Bengali and Hindi. I think it's very cool that the author did this so we can see the similarities but also the differences in both of their backgrounds. I'm hopeful for the latter half, and I think my estimated rating is going to be about a 3.5 stars, but I'm really hopeful I can bump this to a 4. We'll see. Hey y'all, so I've officially finished out Holly Jolly Diwali, and unfortunately the Diwali aspect never increased. We really did not get all that much about the holiday. By the end of the book, they were going into Christmas, which I do think leads into this being a holiday romance, but obviously I went into this expecting Diwali, so let down. I will say, in terms of the love triangle element, which was probably my biggest negative in my previous update, it did start to make a little bit more sense in the latter half. Extra dude character played a slightly bigger role, mostly for one specific scenario. I think a friend of our main character could have done the same exact thing, and it would have had the same ending
ending results. Characters. So Nikki was obviously the most well characterized since we were seeing everything from her perspective. And with that, I do think she had some very solid development throughout the book. I really enjoyed seeing how she grew and changed from where we first met her to the end. She feels a lot more secure in herself by the end of the book. For Sam, our love interest, I do wish we had more from him. I could have gone for so much more about him. I thought he was lovable, but I just did not feel the love that they were supposed to be having by that point in the book. I mean, I kind of started to feel like a Disney parent where they were dropping L-bombs and I'm over here like, you've known each other a month. Starts as a fast fling and feelings develop, but moving to another country for a man you've barely known for 3 weeks, that's so much, girlfriend. So dramatic. However, grand gesture, still warmed my heart. Overall, in terms of the relationship, this was really cute, very sweet. Spice, like maybe one chili pepper purely for thought processes. I don't think we really saw them do anything apart from make out. Again, just back to the fact of I wanted more about Diwali. That's really what I was missing here. I wanted much more of the festivities around it, seeing people celebrate it, more discussions around what it meant to people. But all in all, for this book being titled after Diwali, it really felt like an afterthought. So unfortunately, I think I estimated a 3.5 stars, but actually I think this is more like a 3-star. I would still recommend it. It's very cute. It's very easy. You can blast through it in no time at all. And maybe it's a good way to dip your toe into learning about some Indian culture, but I just wanted more from it personally.
Okay, not off to the best start. Next up was a arc that I was highly anticipating because it was coming from one of my favorite romance authors, Sarah Hogle. Just Like Magic is a romance that has a bit of a fantastical element. We are following Betty, who comes from a very rich family and is a influencer herself. However, she has actually hit a bit of a rough patch. Whilst getting drunk and having a run-in with a record playing All I Want for Christmas Is You, she ends up summoning the holiday spirit. Hall is determined to give Betty the best Christmas possible, and lots of shenanigans ensue. Hey y'all, so I have officially hit the halfway point into Just Like Magic by Sarah Hogle, and starting out, this is so different from her 2 previous books. I did not realize this had a magical realism element, but I'm loving it. The one thing that has stayed completely true though in her writing is the comedy. This is laugh out loud funny. I've genuinely laughed out loud reading this. It's so dang ridiculous. In this 50%, I've been actively trying to figure out what pieces of media does this book make me think of, and I'm pretty sure I've nailed it down. It's as though Alexis from Schitt's Creek was paired with a Christmas version of the prince from Enchanted and then put into the Christmas Carol. Our male main character Hall is literally the embodiment of holiday cheer. He is so naive. He is so dang wholesome. He's sweet. He's happy. He really just wants everybody to have a great time this Christmas. He's so pure. Since he is this fantastical holiday character, he does have magic. It's not really explained. Very hand-wavy. Anytime there is explanations around it, it just sounds so outlandish and ridiculous. But I think that adds to the entire charm of his character. On the opposite side, our female main character, Betty, whose eyes we are seeing through. She's still pretty obnoxious. She's very self-absorbed. And you have a hard time believing you're ever going to cheer for this person to have their happily ever after. But I will say, by the halfway point, she has grown on me a little bit. She's finally starting to showcase herself as a little bit more human, finally showing some self-awareness, and also being kind of genuine and normal in relation to the rest of her family. All of her siblings are consistently competing with one another, trying to be the best, have the biggest name, the biggest following. It's super ridiculous. All of the characters are really over the top. We do start to see more normal interactions between Betty and her family members as the book goes on, and partially that might be because of Hall getting involved. Across the board, Hall just like has his work cut out for him because everybody in this family is kind of a Scrooge. Pretty surprised by the revelation that Betty's ex-boyfriend was going to become abusive. He was very manipulative, consistently love bombing her, and unfortunately she does have a bit of drama from that situation. I do think that element is going to kind of affect
the budding relationship between Hall and Betty, but at the same time, I will admit I'm not really sure if I'm very convinced. The camera angle might have changed because Sam just knocked it over. But anyway, I'm not terribly convinced by a budding relationship between these two. I can kind of see the development of their relationship into friends, but I don't really know if I'm feeling it for them to be more than that yet. Finally, one thing that is so tiny, so positive, but it almost made me cry is the relationship we see of Betty's parents. Her dad is definitely Raincloud. Her mom is like the sunniest sunshine, and they're so stinking cute. Oh my god. There's a single moment where we see how these two interact and how their love languages are with one another, and just, it was so pure. I'm not kidding when I say I almost started crying from it, and it's literally a paragraph long. Anyway, in the end, I can't really be too judgmental about this book because it's definitely cheesy, and I think it's aware of that. Estimated rating, I'm definitely going with 4 stars because I've nearly cried, I've laughed out loud, and this entire book is so stinking cute. I have a hard time believing that there's anything that really is gonna make me mad.
Hey y'all, so I officially finished out Just Like Magic. Oh my gosh, how did I continuously keep relating Hall to Prince Edward and Enchanted and not realize he's basically Buddy the elf? I guess it's just because when I started this book, I wasn't in the Christmas mindset. This entire book was a strange amalgamation of all these different weird events that this family is partaking in whilst visiting their grandparents for Christmas. So my pitch of this book has now been updated. It's like the cast of Schitt's Creek being subjected to Prince Edward from Enchanted, been Christmas carolized, and then giving them all the Buddy elf treatment. That's how I'm selling you this book. I know it sounds like a lot. It was a lot, but it was also so freaking hilarious. The majority of this plot is very lighthearted, super ridiculous. I was laughing left and right. There would be certain situations where I would be telling Josh about this and he was like, is this the same book you were reading? This took a major turn somewhere, and I just would think, yeah, you were correct. It has taken many of those. Even with all the out of this world ridiculousness though, there were some more serious topics that were brought up that I do think lent a bit of levity to the silliness of the story. We get a bit of a peek into Betty's relationship with her toxic ex-boyfriend. We definitely get to see when she realizes that she has a social media addiction and finally starts to realize just how low her self-esteem is and what is necessary for her to finally start building herself back up. On one hand, each of these situations did kind of catch me off guard because they were so much more realistic in comparison to the rest of this book, but at the same time, I do think it helped bring the chaos a little down. On top of that though, it also just lent to making Betty's character seem a little bit more realistic, and also with that definitely helped with her character development. All of the other characters are maybe not quite as ridiculous, but they have their moments, and a lot of them are very unlikable when you first meet them. By the end, I do think, thankfully, each of them kind of had a little bit of a development, which I can't say I was expecting with how some of these characters are introduced, but I thought that was very nice to showcase the impact Hall had on the family apart from just Betty. Now, this is a holiday romance video, and I must admit, as far as romance goes, this is completely clean, and thank God for that, because as Betty says herself when describing Hall, it's like eyeing a Keebler elf with seductive intentions. Just doesn't work. I wasn't only disappointed with the lack of spice though, I was also just a little bit let down in terms of a romance. I didn't quite feel like their relationship had hit that point yet for me, but I did really enjoy where their relationship started with Hal almost acting as her genie to them becoming very good friends that were impacting one another's lives in a positive way. Even with that though, with a Hallmark sort of story as this, the ending was absolutely tooth-achingly sweet, and I think that is another thing I can definitely always count on Sarah Hogle to do. It just so perfectly fit the rest of the story. This book was out of this world bonkers at times, but I had a fantastic time reading it. I can't in good conscience give this 5 stars when I was not convinced by the romance, but with everything else that happened in this book, I have to give it 4 stars. It was so freaking funny. Dang it, I thought we were onto something when it was Sarah Hogle, but not quite. Next up is Faking Under the Mistletoe by Ashley Shepherd. Our main character, Olivia, is a huge fan of the holidays. However, she has an incredibly grouchy boss. But while attending a company Christmas event, Olivia takes it upon herself to convince his ex that the two of them are now in a wonderfully happy relationship. I've heard tons of praise about this book from everybody who's read it, but seeing as how it's indie, it's a little less popular. Hey y'all, I have hit the halfway point into Faking Under the Mistletoe by Ashley Shepherd, and I just wanted to hold this up so I could show you all of the tabs I have. I had to stop putting yellows in because I have been laughing in this so much that if I didn't, honestly, every single page would probably have a yellow tab. But on top of that, there is also a ton of pinks. I think you can tell that this is pretty dang cute. I will say this didn't start off fantastically. I did actually have a few red flag tabs within the first few interactions between our main characters of Olivia and Asher. But I will admit, by this point, I am loving this. I am all over it. Still not a fan of the fact that Olivia is actually Asher's intern, even though there isn't really any utilization of the power imbalance in regards to their relationship. It still just feels a little icky, but I'm trying to not let that affect my enjoyment too much. This is so damn Christmassy. I'm freaking loving it. Honestly, Olivia could probably give Hall from Just Like Magic a run for his money. There are constant mentions of the wintry atmosphere. Classic holiday events are taking place left and right, and then there are so many references to Christmas movies, and usually utilized in insults to one of the two main characters, and I love it. It's so fun. As far as our characters go, I will say in the beginning, I did not think I could ever like Asher. He definitely comes across as a very grouchy douchebag. Once we get to know him a little bit more, you can see in his actions that he is not a bad guy. He does have a kind interior. He's just a Grinch on the outside, but at least it doesn't feel like he's bullying Olivia. They go back and forth insulting each other so much, but for every insult he tosses her way, she has one to bat back. Their banter is so freaking good. This is probably up there for some of the best romance banter I've ever read. It's so good, so funny. Every single line has me laughing or awing at them. On the opposite side, Olivia, I loved her right out of the gate. She's really sweet. She's so joyful. She's happy. She's so pure. But with that, I will say she can be a lot and occasionally does start to ride the line a little bit into annoying. She's also pretty naive and weirdly secretive about certain portions of her life that I don't really understand what's the necessity in keeping them a secret, though they do initially cross the line as a fake relationship. Thankfully, in regards to the entire story, that's a pretty small element. They still spend plenty of time together in terms of their jobs and also as just kind of themselves. They still aren't even quite a couple yet at this point that I'm in. If anything, I would say they're sort of becoming like fake dating with benefits, but you can tell they definitely feel things for one another, and I'm all over it. So even though we didn't start off on the best foot, I am going to have to put my estimated rating at 4 stars for right now because I'm having such a good time with this. It is so freaking cute, fantastic sexual tension, and I am cracking up every time I pick it up. Hey y'all, so I officially finished out Faking Under the Mistletoe, and all right, this may be one of the best holiday romance books I've ever read. I was really impressed that in the latter half of the book, it took on a much more serious tone. There was this additional plot piece that I did not see coming, but at the same time, I do think it fit perfectly with the industry the characters worked in. They both work for a fairly big name PR company, and it definitely made this seem a lot more grounded and realistic and not just super pure Hallmark movie. But that does not mean that the Christmas vibes ever stopped. Those were through and through so strong in this book. Honestly, I still maintain Olivia could really give Hall a run for his money. I'm also happy to report that this, in regards to a plot layout, deviated from the traditional romance book, and I was very happy to see that. Not long after the halfway point, we actually have the big breakup moment. From there, we spend a lot more time focusing solely on Olivia, really delving into her character. We do see a bit more exploration of Asher's character as well, but since we're not seeing from his perspective, it's not quite as strong. Plus, obviously, more time with that side plot. As far as their relationship goes, that time is then dedicated to them slowly making their way back together. There are still some bumps along the way. I will say miscommunication was an issue, which I'm never a fan of, but thank God it wasn't so much that I was out of my mind wanting to throw the book across the room. Seeing as how it is a romance, I would have liked a little bit of extra spice. And then the epilogue of this actually is an extra chapter from Asher's perspective, which honestly, I think the author did a great job with Asher's perspective. So it just made me want more of that and really wish that the entire book had been dual POV. I'm not going to be too broken up about that though. In the end, my Cawpile breakdown for this came out to 4.5 stars, but honestly, this is a 5 by 5 and I really loved this. So I'm wrapping that baby up to a 5 stars.
Haha! Okay, apparently this is the sign that I need to check out more indie romances.
This next one I've been highly anticipating because it is actually the finale in a series that I have mostly enjoyed. Unfortunately though, my enjoyment has gone down as the series has progressed. A Very Merry Bromance by Lyssa Kay Adams is the final in the Bromance book club series. This one we are following Colton, who is a country music star and a member of the Bromance book club. He actually ended up having a one-night stand after Mac from the second book's wedding, and while he was absolutely ass over tea kettle, Gretchen ends up running away. However, a year later, Gretchen ends up needing to utilize her relationship with Colton so that he will become the brand ambassador for her family's liquor brand. In true rom-com fashion, Colton agrees to do so, but only if Gretchen goes out with him. Hey y'all, so I have officially hit the halfway point into A Very Merry Bromance, and I am happy to say that it has been going much more positive than I felt in the last few books within the series. You definitely can read this book as a standalone because the author does take the time to explain connections and little pieces of background anytime they come up, but I do think you have the added benefit of really experiencing the relationship this book club has if you read the rest of the series. I just love the book club so much. All of these men are in very stereotypical masculine roles and jobs, but they push against the toxic masculinity of our society, and I love it. It's so fantastic. It's so sweet, it's so wholesome, and it's just so healthy. In regards to this as a Christmas romance, it definitely does have that grumpy sunshine trope going on, the Grinch and Bunny the Elf combo, but I do like that our female main character Gretchen is actually the Grinch or Scrooge character. She gets called Scrooge quite often. Honestly, I do have pretty positive feelings towards her, even though it does kind of drive me crazy that she's so non-communicative about her feelings, particularly when it seems like it would benefit her to be more transparent with Colton. Also, my girl, can I offer you some queso to go with that chip on your shoulder? Now, I will say we finally started to see a little bit of explanation for why she is the way she is in regards to her familial background. There's definitely some drama going on there that I think I'm about to start diving into more, and I'm invested. I'm very intrigued to see where that's gonna go in the end. I already love Colton so much in regards to personality and the depth we have seen from him. He is just fantastic. I do think he sort of shot himself in the foot by blackmailing Gretchen to go on a date with him. Definitely manipulative and self-serving, which the guys call him out on. Colton is definitely the one that brings the Christmas spirit, and I do think that has been matched in the atmosphere as well, though personally I would like a little bit more just because that element was so fantastic, and both Just Like Magic and Faking Under the Mistletoe, the tension between these two is absolutely fantastic when they are together. This has actually just started to get a little steamy, and I am so into it. Oh my god. In regards to this book as a part of the series, I also appreciate that the author brought back excerpts of the book club's book, which she did in the first book and a little bit in the fourth, but she's officially brought that back in this one, and I do really enjoy it because I love seeing the parallels between our main couple and then the couple in the book that the group is reading. Colton has actually given a copy of the book to Gretchen, so I love that they can actually talk about this romance book as well. And of course, it's a holiday romance. So all in all, I am having a fantastic time with this one so far. I am going to estimate a rating of 4 stars for the time being, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it went higher than that. Hey y'all, so I officially finished out A Very Merry Bromance, and while this is probably my second favorite in the series, very closely following the first,
I loved this through and through. I was squealing, tearing up, so incredibly invested in these two main characters finally finding their happily ever after. I really appreciated how Colton and Gretchen treated one another. They had such respect for each other, and of course the familial drama that was taking place also kept me incredibly engaged because I had to see how that was going to play out. But those themes also just had my heart in a vice throughout many portions of this book. Speaking of family though, the found family that has been created throughout the series is just so precious. As I mentioned previously, you don't need to read the rest of the series to read this book, but I think if you do, you get a better appreciation of the entire found family which has been created because of the book club. I love all of them, and I love that they are all trying to take care of one another. It's just so sweet, and I really appreciate getting to see the group of them celebrating something because you see how they truly are their own family. Colton's bio family, however, was also incredibly adorable, and I loved that they took Gretchen in with open arms and just so quickly accepted her, especially since it was so unconditionally in comparison to Gretchen's own toxic family. The climax around that whole situation though had me on the edge of my seat while whooping in delight. I do also appreciate the fact that Adams actually took the time to dive into Gretchen's character and explore the ramifications that her toxic family dynamic has had on her throughout her life. Across all of these books, I have absolutely adored the grand gesture moments, and this one was no different, particularly given there was a Santa element to it, which both fit the holiday Christmas theme so well, but was just in general kind of hilarious. The epilogue was nice and cheesy, and in regards to spice, I think I would give this about 3 chili peppers. Seeing as how I am reading this book for a holiday romance video, I do have to critique the fact that I did want more of the Christmas atmosphere. Along with that though, while Gretchen had her familial drama side plot, Colton was dealing with hitting a bit of a stonewall in his professional career, and it felt like his side plot just wrapped up really quick and easy in comparison to Gretchen's. And then finally, I really liked that this book finally brought back those excerpts from the book club's book, but I wanted more of them. I like that element of this series, and I want it to be utilized more because I think it's something that helps this romance series stand out. Apart from that though, I did really enjoy this one. I think in the end, I'm gonna give this about 4.5 stars is what my cop pile came down to, but seeing as how this is a 5x5, that means I'm gonna round that up to a 5 stars for the basis of this video. So we are doing better here. Finally is a romance book that I know has been highly anticipated for a lot of other people. Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrun. This is a sapphic romance story where we are following Ellie, who ends up in a marriage of convenience with the owner of the building her job is located in. However, turns out Andrew's sister is Jack, the absolutely gorgeous lesbian that Ellie had a one-night stand with the last Christmas. Hey y'all, so it has taken me longer than anticipated, but I finally have hit the halfway point into Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrun. That isn't because I'm having a bad time with this book. If anything, I am so completely entertained. Right out of the gate, there are so many shenanigans due to the setup. It's absolutely ridiculous. It definitely fits rom-com logic. I'm so entertained. The Christmas atmosphere is pretty strong so far also. There's tons of snow constantly mentioned, and so far we have seen a fair few festive activities, which I do think are adding to the overall story. You can definitely tell already that the climax of this story is probably going to hinge on a fair amount of familial drama, and I am all over that. That is some tea I will always happily drink. Along with the main plot, there are also occasional chapters of Ellie's comic that she created based off of this one day she had with Jack the previous year, but in a novelized form. On one hand, whenever something like this happens, I do feel like it messes with pacing, but on the other hand, I think Cochrun has placed them very well because each time one of these occurs, it's often giving us more background and explanation, answering a question which was raised in the current timeline. Because of the background, Jack and Ellie's interactions in the current timeline are pretty awkward
and stifled, but also filled with wonderful sexual tension, while the past ones are easier going, but have more depth and are much more personal. Still tension filled though. I'll admit I am kind of in love with Jack already. Both she and Ellie are neurodiverse, which I do think is well incorporated into each of their characters and their actions, making them feel more believable and realistic. Since majority of the book is through Ellie's eyes, we also get a side plot of her struggling relationship with her mom. Because of that, I just loved Andrew and Jack's family all the more, seeing as how they welcomed Ellie with open arms. And a plus towards Alison Cochran's writing is we actually see the full extent that Ellie's troubled relationship with her mom has had on most of her life. All of that has worked together to make Ellie a very likable character who you can easily empathize with, though I will say she is pretty obtuse when it comes to Jack's feelings, which has made me want to shake her. But I do think an argument could be made that it could be due to Ellie's own demisexuality. Just before the midpoint cutoff, there was this very dramatic reveal that took place, which is why I'm filming this right now, because I'm gonna start working on my bullet journal and listening to this book so I can find out what happens next. Thus far, I am having a really good time with this, and I'm gonna put my estimated rating at a fairly high 4 stars. I wouldn't be terribly shocked if this went higher than that. If it does, however, I'm gonna regret not picking this book up from Book of the Month. So I actually just finished this one today. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite a 5-star, but I did still really enjoy it. In regards to the Christmas atmosphere, which I was adoring in the first half, that kind of disappeared in the latter, and I'm still a little bit upset about it. That's only worsened by the fact that the last chapter of the book actually takes place on Valentine's Day. This is Christmas. You sold me Christmas, and then you gave me Valentine's. As I anticipated, the climax did have a ton of familial drama going on. Whoo! That was entertaining, and the explosion that occurs between Jack and Ellie, I was really frustrated at the fact that Ellie doesn't really try to coherently explain her side of the story. She sort of just gives up halfway through and leaves. That just made for a really frustrating third act conflict and felt like it was starting to rely a little bit too much on miscommunication. But in regards to the romance, I did love seeing Jack and Ellie's feelings for each other slowly start to grow and grow the more time they are forced to spend together. And the spice that we do eventually see was definitely good, 3 chili peppers worth. However, with the relationship, technically speaking, these two have only kind of been together for, let's say, about a week's time. And yet the final grand gesture moment involves a love declaration. That's just a little too much for me personally. Just feels really fast, out of place. Throughout the book, we do see Ellie struggling with her anxiety, but I did greatly appreciate that she was finally called out on her toxic thought patterns and her paralyzing fear of failure, because that finally allowed us to see some growth from her, but most of it happens off page, which I wasn't the biggest fan of. While I did still really like Ellie, I did come to find her more and more frustrating as the book progressed. I also believe I did mention in the first update that Ellie is demisexual. I am not, but I have seen from some Own Voices reviewers that it is a little odd with a character being demisexual that the initial basis of her relationship with Jack is based off a one-night stand. I did think that was a little odd myself. All in all, I did like this book. It just wasn't my favorite of this video, so I ended up going with roughly 4 stars for my graphic. Technically speaking, my compile came down to about a 3.75, which I think better fits with my feelings here. Alright, so in the end, that is only 2 out of 5 books that came out to roughly 5 stars. Still not a success on my 5x5 journey, but that's okay. I have plenty more ideas to come. Alright, y'all, so that is it for today. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!